Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. My next guest for this week is from an area that does entertain snow at times. So if you were to happen to be out and about in December with your kids getting ready for Christmas and there's snow on the ground, your kids might yell, "Look, there's Santa Claus." He's also a candidate for the Area 5 director. So if you would, join me in welcoming to the show Mr. Chris St. Clair. How you doing, Chris?
Very good. Best introduction.
Well, I knew you had a sense of humor, so I'm like, I know he's not going to get offended.
No, it would take a lot to get me offended. I don't take myself that seriously.
Nor do I. Okay. All right. So, Chris, if you would take a moment and introduce yourself.
Chris St. Clair. Most people will know me as 667 Beast on the Instagrams. I am the neighbor of the Beast, and apparently I'm running for the Area 5 USPSA area director. I would actually say that more importantly, I'm a father, I'm a boyfriend, I'm a son. Uh, I'm a human being on this planet. The USPSA stuff is interesting. Sometimes it's even a bit entertaining, but it doesn't define me, and I certainly hope it doesn't define anybody else.
So, I assume you've listened to an episode or two.
I have. I've been studying,
I,
stalking you even a bit.
I had a feeling. So these may not be the hardest questions for you because you may have already cheated and been prepared.
I I think that I'm prepared, except I fear the answers to these questions may show a side of me that might be a little bit more nerdy than most people think that I am.
Oh, okay. Going to get a little spicy with the nerdness. I like it.
I think so. Yes.
Okay. All right, we're gonna start right off then because now
All
now
right.
I want to hear.
Send it, Dave. Send it.
All right. Favorite movie?
No question. Pulp Fiction. Like
Mm.
Pulp Fiction is the best movie ever, and there are three blank spaces underneath it because nothing in my life has come close. But I have to tell my Pulp Fiction story.
I'm
So,
all ears.
all right, here we go. It's 1995 ish. I've recently graduated from college. I got myself a real job. And when you get yourself a real job, you get yourself a real girlfriend. And this real girlfriend and we go out to the movies. And there is this great new movie that everybody's talking about. It is called Pulp Fiction. I bring a friend of mine along, and there was supposed to be another female, but that fell through and all that sort of stuff as you are in your young and early 20s. We get to this movie, and I can't stop laughing. Like every single sociopathic part of that movie, like when John Travolta blows off Marvin's head, I have tears rolling down my face. And I have my friend on one side and my girlfriend on the other side, and both of them are looking at me like I am a sociopath. And it happens through the entire movie. And needless to say, that was my last date with that young lady.
Wow. So have you had a real date since then?
I have. I have my lovely
Okay.
lady Jennifer has actually moved in with me recently. So I've like not only have I been gainfully married, gainfully divorced, had a couple of or three kids, more than a couple, more than a few dogs, and yeah. So Pulp Fiction didn't completely ruin me, but it is still my absolute favorite movie. I can watch it over and over again. Uh, obviously I know all the words, but the dialogue and the interaction between the people, it couldn't be better as far as I'm concerned.
Say what one more time?
I dare
That is
you.
my favorite line of that entire movie. I love Samuel L. Jackson. After that, he became my favorite character and actor of all time. Hilarious.
Well, and I think we are of a similar generation where John Travolta was gone, right? He was Urban Cowboy and Saturday Night Fever and all that stuff, and then he disappeared. He did some little kid
Poof.
movies, right?
Yeah.
And then he came back and with a vengeance,
And in a role he had never done before.
right? And nobody expected to, heroin addicted mob hitman or whatever. That
Right.
that wasn't his shtick, and I mean he nailed it. I think everybody nailed all of those characters. Mr. Wolf, I can't get enough of Mr. Wolf.
All right. So I've got to ask a question about the movie to see if you're a true fan and just how much of a fan you are. What is a Whopper in France?
It's not a Whopper; it's a quarter pounder with cheese,
That's
and
right.
and
What
it
is it?
and it's a Royale with cheese,
There
and
we
it's
go.
because
All
of the
right.
metric system.
So good you corrected me. All right. I don't know if you are into superheroes or not. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if you are, I'm sorry. Let me back up one. I forgot book. I have
Oh,
realized not many people read, but I see a bunch of books back there. So what's your
uh,
favorite?
yes. This one actually had me torn because again I was studying what book would I pick, and one of the last gentlemen you interviewed talked about Lord of the Rings, and I would say the Fellowship of the Ring. The Lord of the Ring trilogy is a thing, and I read The Hobbit when I was in junior high, and I actually did a couple of research papers on the Lord of the Rings. That's the nerd factor. I did a whole shtick on Gandalf as a Christ figure through the entire trilogy and through the Silmarillion as well. But definitely Fellowship of the Ring, because Boromir, the human who thought that he could take the Ring of Power and use it for good, and when he tried to take it from Frodo and he realized that he couldn't do it, and he realized he was wrong, and that's when he started to fight for Frodo. And that character, the way he developed, and more importantly, where when he got new information, changed his mind and changed his actions, like right then and there when he realized he was wrong and that he'd been going down the wrong path. That particular character, uh, when I was 15 and read it, spoke to me, and now as a more seasoned gentleman, I that particular character still stands out to me. And he winds up dying at the end of the book, but uh, he at the end figured out what he was actually supposed to be doing and did it.
Okay. All right. That's quite the science fictiony book and movies and all of that. So going into that next question that I almost went into, are you a superhero fan?
I was a superhero fan prior to all of the movies, and I can be brought back
Hmm.
in. I kind of gave up on the X Men when Wolverine's adamantium skeleton got sucked out of him, circa about probably 95, 96. And then all the movies came out. My kids were just the right age to reintroduce them to the X Men, and then um, all the Marvel characters or all the DC characters. I'll admit I was never much of a DC guy. Their characters were a little bit too perfect. Batman started coming around as having, and I'll just say, demons within himself, but Superman was too perfect. Wonder Woman was too perfect. All of those characters just, they didn't speak to me, but all the Marvel characters, the X Men particularly, they had character faults and they had human emotions and human conflict even within the team. And that kind of, I guess I'll say, spoke to me from a both literary standpoint and obviously the art and all that kind of stuff. But the movies came out, and we in this household, and again, people feel free to judge me. It doesn't bother me. Uh, the Deadpool is a Christmas movie. I don't care what you say, and my family sits around and we watch Deadpool at Christmas.
Okay. I watched Die Hard. You watched Deadpool, the other D movie. It's all good.
Yep, right.
So,
Have you seen the uh, where Santa Claus is really a Viking warrior? Uh, Slaughter Night, Silent Night. Was it Silent Night? No.
no, I haven't seen that. Mm-mm.
That one was that's a pretty good Christmas movie as well, with
Okay.
bludgeoning with hammers and things.
Yeah. Very Christmassy, apparently. So, who would you say, when you were a fan, who was your favorite?
I had a thing for Wolverine. I'll admit I followed him all the way through, but Cyclops. I think Cyclops was sort of thrust into a position that was really meant for his brother, because the whole X Men were formed around his brother, and then his brother wound up not being able to handle it, and that dynamic sort of again was interesting to me as a teenager, into college years. I didn't read too many comic books, but after I was after I got out and got a job and needed something to put on my dining room table other than a newspaper because I wasn't about to read that.
All right. Moving on to the next one. What is your, of all time, what is your favorite gun and caliber? And they don't have to be married together.
So in this case, they are the Glock Model 31 in 357 SIG. And engineer nerd, circa, what was that, 93, 94. The ballistics of the 357 Magnum with the capacity of a semi automatic pistol for the time, I think that was the best semi automatic pistol to carry and the most advanced cartridge. It was bottlenecked, so it fed better. It had all of the velocity with reasonable pressure, so you didn't completely destroy the gun. Although my 31 did go through two frames. Glock actually replaced one for me way back when. But that's it, 357 SIG, and then the Glock 31.
The Glock 31. Now, which one's that one?
That's the full size. So it was a Glock 22, 40 Smythe and Western, but chambered in the 357 SIG. So 15 plus one, all of the good Glock stuff at the time. Mine happened to be a Gen 3, so it had the finger grooves. And that poor thing, it served me very well from 2003, and I transitioned off of it. I'm going to say 2012 or 13. So I carried the same gun for 10 years, and it just kept on going. It was my gun that I used for instructing. I had a 40 Smith and Wesson barrel that I would put into it just to shoot some moderately priced ammo in 40. A lot of departments were using 40 at the time, so ammo was plentiful for 40. Not so much with 357 SIG. I think the Marshals, no, one of the federal branches used the 357 SIG for a while. A bunch of state
Hmm.
troopers did. It never caught on. Once bullet technology kind of caught up with the ability to expand at slower speeds, the that cartridge became obsolete.
I'll have to look that up, figure that out.
Yeah, I think it was only relevant. Well, it was never really relevant, but it was only pushed probably late 90s, probably by 2008, it was probably impossible to find factory ammo.
So it sounds like you've been shooting and instructing, you've been around guns for quite a while. What's your
I've seen,
favorite story during that whole time?
hmm. Oh, that's a great question, Dave. Um,
I try.
this actually isn't a success story on my side as an instructor. Um, I I did the instruction thing for about 10 years, from about 2000 to 2011 or so. And once the politics here in Wisconsin changed, where it looked like concealed carry was actually going to happen, we started running classes for civilians. We specific the company that I worked with was typically law enforcement and private security training, and then we started doing, and I'll use the word civilians for CCWs preparation. It hadn't been legal yet, but we're pretty sure that anybody that was a licensed certifier for law enforcement was going to be able to sign paperwork for CCW. So we started doing that, and we very quickly, as a business model, found out to do the classroom portion separate of the range portion. So we would do the classroom portion, call it 3 hours ish, like on Saturday. And then if they wanted to come to the range, it was another fee to do the actual live fire. And a particular couple came in and we discussed not only the legalities of using force, but the actual dynamics of using force, what it might look like, what it might feel like, how it might play out, and more importantly, getting one's mind wrapped around purposely doing harm to another human being. Right? It's not a thing taken lightly. We see it in Hollywood. We see, bullets flying over, but we see Bruce Willis in the next movie and he's just fine, right? Uh, you know,
Right.
kind of turning those screws in people's brains. And this couple took it, and Sunday showed up, and we didn't take we'd had another enough people take the classroom portion and not come to the range because it turned their brain on and they decided this wasn't for them. Uh, the gentleman showed up the next day and he handed me a letter from his wife, and she basically said, "Thank you for being honest about this. Nobody has really opened up my mind or really made me think this all the way through. And I don't know whether I'm going to get my CCW or not, but you've made me actually think. And although I'm not at the range, that doesn't mean that you turned me off. It just means that you made me think." And educating adults is definitely different than educating kids. And when you actually have an adult realize, oh my, there's more thinking to do than just sitting at a desk or just doing some homework or reading a report and then answering some multiple choice questions, but actually processing it, seeing how it applies to them, and then doing with it as they choose. That's probably the best thing that I got out of instructing. Now, from the actual shooting side, the best thing that I got is time with my family, and that's USPSA to my family. I've had more captured time with my two boys on the range than I can even begin to account for. Over the last 5 years, I will bet, between traveling and just range time in general, uh, that is it's invaluable to me. I couldn't even put a uh, any type of thing that I would trade for it, because my kids actually want to come and hang out with me. And I mean, they're 17-year-old boys. I know I didn't want to hang out with my dad when I was 17, but they want to come to the range. They want to hang out with the range guys, the whole group that we shoot with, and do that, do the shooting range stuff with their dad and their range friends that have morphed over the last 5 years or so.
Okay. We'll come back to that one because there's more to uncover there. But now that we've got all the initial questions out of the way, Have you always lived in Wisconsin? Did you grow up there?
Uh, we kind of grew up all over the place. My father was an anthropology professor, and he was at Morehead State. He was at UWM here in Wisconsin. I've pretty much had roots in Wisconsin since maybe I was 6 or 7, with a couple of forays in and out, but always came back to Wisconsin. Both my parents' families were from the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. So
Okay.
it's been, I've been well rooted here, and I haven't lived anywhere else um, since I was about 23 or so. So yes, I'm a Wisconsinite.
Okay. So Wisconsin's a big state for hunting. So did you grow up doing any hunting?
Yeah, my father my father was a hunter. My father and I spent a lot of time hunting together. We would take an annual trip out west to do pheasants, and we did some mule deer, even some coyote. We tried to chase ducks south once, and that didn't go particularly well because of the weather. But it's definitely something that we've always done, and it's been in the background of the family with my dad and his brothers and my cousins. It's sort of a culture here in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I, I'll admit, you grow up, you get a wife, you have some kids, and that's the kind of stuff that falls by the wayside. And I like to say that I took a 20-year pause from really doing anything fun to get a job, get a divorce, and have some kids.
Okay. So you so you grew up around guns, but at what point did you find competition?
Oh, that was pretty young. There's the obvious competition. Your dad hands you a brick of 22s and a single shot bolt action rifle to you and your cousin, and you put a match, a strike anywhere match, 15 feet down the range, and you try to light it and see who can light the match the most. And I think the magic number was like 3 over the course of probably 10 years. But I actually, uh, where I went to college was sort of in the corner of the state of Wisconsin, where Iowa and Illinois and Wisconsin all come together. There, there were what's it called, where you put your hands in your pocket and shoot a pistol. Was it is it PPC? Is that the police something? It was
No
it was
idea.
it was run through the ROTC, and so they would hand you a gun, and you'd go down to the range, and off you went. And I want to say it was a score of 50 was really good, and it was mainly like bullseye shooting with
Okay.
a with and you there were 38 revolvers and 45 1911s.
Okay.
And
So
so that's sort of how I found it. And then graduated, got a real job, bought a handgun. Well, back up a little bit. My dad was into bench rest shooting for a little bit, so that got me into bench rest shooting. And this is middle 90s, so machining isn't what it is today. There weren't any CNC machines. A lot of messing with stuff that today is just taken for granted. You can buy a half-minute gun pretty much off the shelf at any sporting goods store nowadays. If you had a half-minute gun in 1995, you were doing really well. So that got me into that. And from there, you go to enough gun stores and you see enough handguns. And then I was starting to get into the law enforcement world. I had to buy myself a 1911, right? These plastic guns were kind of coming around, but nobody was quite sure that they were going to catch on. So I bought myself a 1911, and I went to use the rifle range one, must have been a Sunday morning, and there were these guys running around with their handguns all over the place, and they called it IPSC. And this is 95. I'm like, tell me more about this. I want to do this. Got myself a nice leather holster for my 1911, and and one of those double magazine pouches, or they're like 12.
Yeah, the 45-degree angle. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Got myself some of those, and I went and I shot IPSC, and at that point in time, I was hooked on that game. Went out and bought the 10-round magazines because there was just open and limited at that time. And then that's where I noticed the plastic guns. There was
Mm.
a guy that showed up with a Glock Model 20. So the 10 millimeter auto made major because major was 175 back then, and he had a Glock 20, and I'm like, I have to have one of those because with the high cap mags, which were now illegal because of the Clinton, what was that, assault weapon ban.
Yep.
So I got myself a Glock 20, a Hellwig holster. Do you remember Hellwig? Australian
No.
company. It was basically a steel. If you picture a Kydex holster, very minimalized, but made out of metal and then wrapped in leather.
Wow. Okay.
Everybody Google that. I think they're still in business, but I don't think they make any of the stuff that they made back in the 90s. Brought a cop friend of mine out, and we played IPSC. I don't know if it was every month for the summer or if it was every other month. It wasn't very often because the group that was using the range was actually coming up from Illinois, because at the time in Illinois you had to have like special permits to own handguns. So I think they kept their guns in Wisconsin or something like that. I don't remember all the stories,
Oh, wow.
but that's how
Okay.
I got the bug. And actually found myself in firearms retail in the late 90s. There was a local gun shop that also did law enforcement sales, and they needed somebody that was willing to learn about the plastic guns. I had just bought this Glock 20, so they sent me to Glock Armorer School, and I armored on the plastic guns on Thursday nights and every other Saturdays. And then we did law enforcement sales on the side.
Wow. So you've been a pistol armorer of sorts for what, almost 25 years?
Glock armoring does not count. I still have the original punch tool, the original Glock punch tool, and the
Oh, wow.
little plastic keychains that they used to hand out. But that by no means does that count. Um, yeah, HK came out with that the SOCOM gun right about the time. Uh, Somebody chambered a gun in, was it 454 Casull, big hunting gun. That actually sold really well here in Wisconsin because guys were shooting deer with it.
Oh,
Because
wow.
it was, I think it was might have been a Ruger Red Hawk in 454.
What was the barrel length on that thing?
Big. Um,
Like 8
I,
inches?
I want to say the small one was 6 inches, and I think it was 8.5, and I think they might
Okay.
have even I think they might have even had a 10-inch barrel. But guys
Wow.
were, circa 97, 98, mount rigid mounting scopes to these things.
My God.
Well,
Welding them on.
the scopes weren't lasting. No, you couldn't weld them on
Oh,
because you were only going to get, maybe 25 shots, and something was going to rattle loose in the scope because they were taking rifle scopes
damn.
and then putting mounts on these guns, and some of the guns even started coming with, what's the male thing called where the overhand
Oh,
clamps
like the
on the rig.
dovetail?
Yeah,
The
like
dove?
that,
Yeah.
but the gun
That clamp. Yeah.
frames, yeah, would and they would, and you'd take they were probably maybe a really magnified one was like a 4 power on it, and guys were slaying deer with them. And they a lot of guys were also carrying guns like that as backup when they were bear hunting with bows.
I
That,
can
that
see
was
that.
that was another big selling point, and I think some guys took them out west. And I don't know any of those stories.
Well, I mean, it's the old adage, it's a hand cannon. So
I the
put a
uh,
stock on that thing.
well, funny hand cannon story. The 500 Smith and Wesson had just been released, and I was just getting out of retail. This was in definitely my last year selling guns, and the 500 Smith and Wesson came out, and a dude bought a 2.5 inch barrel
Oh my
500 Smith and
god.
Wesson gun.
Oh
And
my god.
if you've ever seen that gun, and this is the first generation one, it was unbelievably overbuilt because the metal technology isn't what it is today. So it was just a massive thing, and I don't know why this guy bought it. And he was a very regular customer, and he bought it and a 20 pack of 500 Smith and Wesson rounds. I remember him walking out of the shop, and then the next week that I was in, that gun was in the used rack for sale
I believe it.
with the ammo. It even said on the tag that it came with like 18 rounds. So he only shot it twice. So now it's the end of the night and it's time to go clean up the range. And everybody's like, "Hey, we got to go, shoot this thing, right?" So we all chipped in and bought a 10 pack of ammo for it. And we were going to go downstairs and shoot this thing. Well, we did rock paper scissors to find out who's going to shoot it first, and I lost, so I had to shoot it first. And you know, 20-something-year-old men, too much time and too much testosterone and way too big of a gun. The bet was nobody could shoot it one-handed. So there I
Oh
am,
my god.
Dave. It didn't go well. It didn't. I'm very glad that the internet wasn't around and that the range video wasn't able to be like YouTubed at this time, because I can only imagine what my arm looked like.
We need like one of those 120,000 frames per second slow mo
Oh,
8K video cameras for that.
well, and like had my wrist broke or something, it would be more interesting.
Ugh. Well, I don't see any scars on your head, so that's a good sign.
True, true, yeah. And we all survived because we all shot. I actually went back and shot a second round because I wasn't the that one-handed shot that I made. It did not make a hole in the paper, and it was a 50-foot range. So I missed what is that, 3 foot by 4 foot piece of paper at 50 feet with this
Wow.
thing. So I had to shoot it again two-handed and actually hit the piece of paper.
Wow. I kind of feel like it's better going first because if you're going second and you just saw what that thing did, you're like, I'm having second thoughts here.
Not one of the smarter things that I've done with the firearm for sure.
I had bought a guy sold me his Smith and Wesson Model 29, so
Hmm.
it's a 3-inch barrel,
Yeah.
44 Magnum. So I went out, and this is also in the 90s. Well, actually, no, it was late 80s. But I went out and shot that thing, and out of 6 shots, twice my support hand came off the gun. There's so much recoil with that. So I can only imagine a
The
500.
and
Good,
supposedly
a
the
50 cal.
yeah, supposedly the longer barrel ones are actually shootable, and they have legit
I
game
believe it.
loads and stuff for them. This thing uh, was in fact unshootable, and not completely
God,
unshootable, but whatever you're going to put into it has to be so downloaded to make it reasonable. It was an unreasonable firearm.
good Lord. Wow. I imagine they didn't sell too many of those. So,
No, there were a few like dust collectors in there. We also had a gold plated Desert Eagle in 50 A&E, and it had the 44 conversion kit as well. I'll bet you
Okay.
that thing's still sitting in that the shop's still open, and I'll bet you it's still in that place.
There are people who will buy it just for the fact they can say they own a gold-plated Desert Eagle.
Maybe I don't know, but it was unbelievably expensive back then, and I
Right.
can only imagine what one of probably I'll bet you that's a $4,000 gun today.
Yeah, but that's half the price of an open gun.
Oh yeah,
So
good point. Yeah, you're not an open
there's
shooter,
your
are you,
major
Dave?
power factor right there.
Yes.
That just gave me an idea. I'm going to need the name of that shop before we get off this
I
podcast.
think it only holds seven though. That's a lot of reloads.
It is, but it'll be the first gun ever to be louder than Chris Gelnick's open gun. God bless it.
Well,
His open gun is crazy loud.
we're just getting over indoor season here in Wisconsin, and some of those open guns indoors, yikes!
Yeah,
I,
I
I've
can
got I've,
imagine.
I've got a buddy that just put popple holes in his, and boy, that gun shoots flat. But you don't want to be within 15 feet of that thing going off.
No, I could not. So when I was at the NC section last year and I saw Chris Gelnick walking up to Chrono where I was at, I could not get away fast enough because on one side of Chrono, there's a concrete wall, like cinder block wall.
Oh,
And I was like, And I was probably 50 feet away and I didn't have my ear plugs in yet. And my God, it sounded like I was standing right beside something bigger than a 9 but not quite an open gun. It was still crazy loud. I was like, that's ridiculous.
I don't know how those guys hear the beep because they've got to do, earplugs, ear muffs, and I don't know, like winter ear muffs over that, or I don't know.
But I've heard that when you're shooting the gun, you don't get all of that because it goes sideways,
Oh, yeah.
and every so you're basically sending it to everybody else.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I don't have open kind of money. You know,
me either.
I'm feeding I'm feeding myself. I'm feeding my girlfriend. I'm feeding my two boys, and I'm feeding my girlfriend's son. Uh, he just bought his own gun, so now I'm just feeding him ammo. So I don't have open money because for open you have to have three guns, right? The one you shoot, your backup gun, and the one that's back
And
at the
it,
shop being rebuilt, right? Isn't that how
there
open
you
works?
go. Yeah. There you go. But again, you got Desert Eagle money because that's only half the price of a single open gun.
Well, I don't think we're looking at the whole equation here though. What does a Desert Eagle magazine cost?
Can't be more than one of those other. Oh,
Oh, the
why can't I think?
MBX, yeah.
The MBX mags, yeah. $160 a mag. Good lord.
Again, when I grow up, or when my kids finally leave, when they all leave, I'm buying an open gun. When you see me, when somebody sees me shooting open, they know
Empty
one,
nester.
I've retired, and all my kids have jobs, and they're just sending me money for Christmas.
or at least ammo.
Yeah, if I maybe maybe if somebody just sent me, uh, I don't even know the open cartridges. Super Comp or the
38
38
Super
Super
Comp
Comp.
and 9
Yeah,
Major.
yeah. Um, do you remember the 9 by 23 Winchester?
No, I do not.
So it was the probably 1995 answer to 38 Super, because 38 Super
Okay.
was a slightly bottleneck, or slight not bottleneck, but slightly tapered cartridge. The 9 by 23 was meant to fit in a 1911, and I think it was 10 in the magazine, but it was straight walled, so it was literally just a really long 9 millimeter. I don't. I've never
Hmm.
even saw brass for it, so I'm glad I didn't buy one of those guns.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a very unique cartridge. I am going to have to look that up though. And so what I've started doing with the YouTube version, so the video version, people who watch, if we talk about something specific, I'm now adding pictures of whatever it is we talk about that's specific. So I will be adding a 9x23 Winchester cartridge into this video so people can see what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, and just so the beard is naturally gray, so all of these pictures that Dave puts in, they're black and white for a reason because we didn't even have colors back then.
Exactly.
No,
Oh,
uh, the I'm going to say the last time I can remember seeing a 9x23 in a catalog, because you used to have to get catalogs before the interwebs. I'll bet you it was 95, maybe 96. And it was to compete. This is back, in if USPSA was around in the 90s, but I'm not sure. I think everybody was still kind of running IPSC rules before USPSA really got underneath it, because USPSA was late 80s, right?
yeah.
When it went,
Mid
but
mid mid 80s, I think, like
yeah,
85ish, somewhere in there.
yeah, but the open guys were doing open things and blowing up 1911s in their hands, and the limited guys were just trying to get more bullets into something that would make major. And 175 power factor is no joke. So
No, it's not. Not at all. Well, and I know that it's probably in the Sammy catalog, so I can find it.
I think 45 ACP ball makes about 175 power factor. I think that's where it came from way back in the day.
Okay.
I, I,
Now
I
would
think
that
don't.
I'm wondering if that would be the 185 grain, because I would think 230 might be even a little bit higher than that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know though.
it may. I don't know where 175 came from, but I do remember seeing in more than my fair share of 1911s blowing the grip panels apart, because those wooden grip panels are really nice, except when the gun goes kaboom, the grip panels break into all kinds of little pieces, and that's where plastic grip panels came from.
I will I'll reach out to Todd Jarrett and see if he knows where the 175 came from. He probably knows.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they took something of the manly cartridges, right? The
Yeah.
357 mag and the 230 ball, and I'll bet you that's it. And Todd had some really weird stuff back in the day too.
Well, that
We
was the David. They. I mean, if you go back to that era, I've had him on and we've talked. There was a lot of experimenting going on because it was so new.
and like I talked about scopes on revolvers. Dudes were putting scopes on 1911s and like zero power scopes, but with crosshairs. Uh, that when they had batteries, they had like batteries, like little battery packs with wires hanging off of them and stuff. Yeah, the open guys. If you think open guys aren't quite right now, back before CNC machining and stuff, you could tell that they were grinding this stuff in their garage and fitting it the Friday night before the Saturday match.
I believe it. Yeah. What you got there? What you drinking?
A little Modelo.
Okay. All
I
right.
figure we're sitting down with friends, and this is how we sit down with friends here in Wisconsin.
There you go. I like it. Okay, so you found IPSC because you were
Yep.
at a range and they were doing that. So when you got into so your Glock 20 is what you were using initially?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And, and it took me, and this is Clinton assault weapon ban. It took me the better part of a year to source three high cap magazines for it.
Wow.
And in back then, a high cap mag, and this is late '90s dollars, was $100. So if you were able to find one, it was going to cost you $100. And then they were stamped.
Damn.
Some of them were stamped LE only during that period. And if you weren't LE and you were caught one, apparently it was like super naughty. I don't really know, but because two of mine were stamped LE only, and it was long before I was sworn. But you got to get the bullets in the gun, so you got to win, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, otherwise you're not competitive. So, and even if you're not looking to win, you still want to be competitive, you know?
Yeah, and
So,
uh, my buddy that I shot with, we were competing against each other mostly, right, for bragging rights, and
yeah.
who was going to buy lunch after the match.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, the true competition of USPSA. No, nobody knows who actually won C class, but they know who's buying lunch.
Exactly. That's all that matters. I'm not buying. That's all that
No,
matters. So,
in my shooting group, we have a Tuesday night league, uh, a hit factor match, where it's kind of we call it the gateway drug into USPSA, where if you only have a 22 and you only have a flap holster, bring it out. We'll figure out how to make your stuff work. And for pistol league, the winner of our squad has to buy the first round of beer in the clubhouse. So
okay.
that's how we do it, because you know sometimes sometimes I have to buy the round, but more than rarely the young punks do, and then dad's got to slip them the 20 in order to buy the round.
There you go. I like it. So now, what did you, from the Glock 20, what did you progress to from there?
Well, that's when I fell in love and got myself married. um, I actually I was a firearms instructor for law enforcement prior to actually being sworn. The state of Wisconsin brought in a number of unsworn people to sort of mix up the firearms curriculum. The firearms curriculum had been kind of stale for a while, and they were looking for a little bit of new blood, and um, specifically people that could instruct instructors. I come from a long line of overly educated people. Both my parents were college professors, so the teaching thing is sort of in my family. And one of the gentlemen who was writing the curriculum at the new curriculum at the time saw me at an IPSC match, and we wound up having lunch, and we wound up having dinner, and then we wound up having some conversations. And he said, I want you to come, and I want you to talk to these other instructors about just the competition thought process of, hey, when you're going to reload your gun, what are you actually thinking about, rather than all the things that cops are taught and not taught, but just talk about handling the firearm. Just the minute manipulations. And all he wanted me to do was literally talk about reloading a Glock pistol efficiently. So I found myself as a firearms instructor, took all the classes, got myself certified, and I wasn't sworn. And all of these cops that I was talking to said really liked what you're talking about and why you're talking about, and great information for me to bring back to my department, but you don't know the job. Right about this time, I'm married. My daughter had just been born, and we're doing the math on what does daycare cost, and what would my now ex-wife be making per hour to go to work. And roughly it turned out to be like $250 a week. And I said, well, I'll get a bartending job. I bartended in college. It can't be that bad. And what was suggested to me through the instructing channels was, why don't you get a part-time job in law enforcement? Here in Wisconsin, damn near every department has part-time people, and except for the very big cities. And oh yeah, I guess it doesn't sound too bad. And started looking around and got myself sworn. That was in 2003. Got myself sworn in 2004. Been working since then. Spent some time as a corporal, spent some time as a sergeant, and I don't really advertise it, but now I'm a chief of a small part-time department here in southeastern Wisconsin. It's good, honest work, and what it's not is it's not bartending. So to cut, then that's a long way to get around. I transitioned from the Glock 20, which is a big gun to tote around on a gun belt, to the Glock 31 and 357 SIG. I thought that particular round was the round to have at the time, and I toted that around basically until the M&P line came out. Most of the departments here in southeast Wisconsin transitioned to the M&P, and that's what my students were using. That's what I got for myself, and I'll not tell you my M&P story because it doesn't play out well.
Okay. What are your thoughts on a lot of these departments now going to staccatos?
Um, Funny you ask. I switched myself to staccato when it was still STI. When Buck was going around talking about STIs, and I bought myself a 5-inch staccato P. Um, and I'll admit, I thought I was buying a safe queen. My experience from the 90s of shooting 1911s was if you get one that works, it works, but if you get one that doesn't, it never does. And I took it to the range and I really liked it, but I knew it was either gonna explode in my hand or it was not going to work. And knock on wood, that stupid 5-inch P has never failed me. But shooting limited minor for somebody with my skills is not the way to go. So I bought myself a Staccato XL in 40, the 5 1/4 inch or 5 3/4 inch in 40. Shot the hell out of that. My boys wanted to get into actually shooting major in limited, so that means I had to buy another Staccato XL in 40 so that both of my boys, because they got to have the same stuff, they're twins, so you can't like,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you can't stack one on the other. They got to have equal equipment. So that's that, and then I switched to single stack when they, and I actually shoot a Smith and Wesson E series in single stack.
Okay.
So
All right.
back to your question about cops using 1911, 2011s, whatever. A quality built gun is a quality built gun. I have had exactly zero issues with staccatos. I don't change triggers. I don't change springs. I don't do any of that. I just run it and they run. I zero issues. Those limited guns, I can't imagine how many 40s they've had through them. And other than tuning the extractor every, let's say, 6 months, zero issue. But there's a manual of arms with those guns that does require an amount of training time. I'm old. I came off the 1911, went to plastic guns, and went back to it. That thumb safety came back to me very quickly. I don't know that it's the best choice for everyone. You know, all of the little manipulations, that's a thing. I'm not saying it's undoable. I know a lot of people that have transitioned to single action guns and done it very well, but the non gun people might be better off staying with a traditional striker fire. My department that I'm responsible for it's a personally owned, departmentally approved firearm because that way they can pick the gun that is best for them. I've had everything from, and uh, my department, it's kind of traditionally the sort of place that when after you get out of the academy, you come and work by us for a couple of years, you go get a real job at a real department. And then, so we have a lot of flow through. Um, we've had everything from Springfield, what are those, XDs
Okay.
to FNs came around for a while, a couple of plastic CZs even. But the standard Glocks, we still got the old timers like me that have been around for a while that just like doing the part time thing. Still have a lot of Glock 22s, a lot of Glock 17s, a lot of Glock 19s come through. Um, I'm running a single action gun. Uh, at least one other officer's running a single action gun that I can think of off the top of my head. Um, more Glocks than anything, I would say at this point. Uh,
Okay.
maybe M&P 2.0, I think might have showed up at qualifications last year.
I like that. I like Springfields. The grip fits my hand very well. So I'm a fan of the XDs. I shoot Canics, but I do like the XDs.
Yeah, I switched over to the CZ, the Shadow 2s for carry
Okay.
optics. We've got five of them in the quiver between three of us shooting carry optics here. My lovely lady Jennifer, she loves her SIG 320. Just, I mean, absolutely loves it. It fits her perfectly, and that's her baby. I'm not about to argue with her. Right.
No, no.
That,
I
that
mean,
that's
if it fits your hands, that's 90% of the battle.
yeah, and that's why my department policy is the way it is. If somebody believes in it and they're willing to trust their life to it and put the time into training with it, who am I to say no? When it comes qualification time, that's going to be a score and it's going to be, it's going to be definitive. But it the the choice of firearm, the trying to stuff any old gun into any old person's hand, I think it takes out the human equation. And there's definitely more to that equation than just a good mechanical tool. There's how the person interacts with it.
Okay. So that brings up a unique question. I mean, we're talking guns, so we're talking shooting.
Mm.
It's all shooting stuff. But so that brings up another question then, and it's I guess more of a philosophical question. But
Ooh. Well, this is
for
good.
for large departments, so and I'm going to use I listened to a Vortex podcast episode today, earlier this morning, and they were talking about Texas Department of Public Service, so they're troopers,
Hmm.
and how they one year they'll buy red dots. The next year, I think he said next year they're doing carbines or no, I think pistols is in like 2 or 3. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
they do like a new purchase every year, and it ends up being like a 5 year cycle. But so let's take a big department where you're going to have people of all heights, sizes, heights
Hmm.
and weights and hand sizes are all different. Everything's different. Would you be a proponent for saying putting out a list saying these are the guns that are acceptable and then purchasing that with department money and making it a department gun but issued to that individual?
I I've actually thought about this more than a little bit, and only because when when cops and specifically cop administrators get together, this is the kind of stuff that they actually talk about. Um, I thought it was going to be much more boring, but if you've got, let's say, like the big department around my house, uh, excluding the city of Milwaukee, has about 90 sworn officers, and they actually have a personally owned, departmentally approved, but they have a list of firearms that they could pick to, like, there are certain guns that are not approved, like nothing single action. They just don't want to deal with it for whatever reason,
Okay.
training issues, all that kind of stuff. So I can see that side. But if if I were, you know, if the city of New York just came up and said, "Hey, Chris, we need somebody to pick a gun for us," right? Because they've got, what do they have? I mean, 4,000 sworn. It's a huge number, right?
It is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would start with a department gun and know that the department gun is only going to work. I'm going to just throw a number out 80% of the time. So I'm going to pick the Glock 19, right? Everybody can shoot a Glock 19. It fits most people pretty well. It's almost a full size gun. It's almost a compact gun. So your plainclothes guys and your uniform people can all use the same gun. And I'm just arbitrarily picking the Glock 19. I'm going to pick the
Okay.
Glock 19 and I'm going to give it to everybody. And then everybody that doesn't score well with it, I'm going to then have a slimmer framed, and I don't know if Glock makes a slimmer frame than that anymore. I don't. I've lost touch with all that stuff, but there's a lot of different options out there. The Sig 320, I think, fits small hands pretty well.
Okay.
Just in my limited experience with it. So I think you could start with most people are going to have this, but we're going to own, 200 of these and 200 of these and 200 of these, and start putting in people's hands that are having difficulties with, the Glock 19, and take the machine out of the equation, because, some people just can't get around a thick double stack gun, but a single stack. I'm dating myself here, but like the old lady Smith and Wessons, the single stack 9 millimeters, those those are really comfortable guns to shoot. And I know they stopped making them a million years ago, but there's other options out there that would give similar capacity, similar ballistics that don't have to fit the mold. I think departments need to be a little bit more flexible for the individuals, more than just say this is our stuff. Um, a bad choice for a department gun would be a HK USP in 45. I can barely hold on to that gun, and I
Oh.
can't imagine anybody much smaller than me being able to manipulate it under stress particularly well.
Well, I think you just offended New York City because there's 36,000 sworn police
Oh
officers.
my God. Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah. There's 10 million people there, right? That makes
No,
sense.
only 8.5 actually.
Oh, only 8.5. So
Only
there's
eight
all
and a
kinds of
half.
room. And how many square miles is that?
Probably four. It says it's the largest police department in the United States.
Well, if they need a gun guy, I'm available.
There you go. It's official. Okay. Well, I did not expect 36,000. I figured more than four, but oh, wow. I did not
Yeah,
expect that.
that that's a big number. That
It
would
is.
probably make a Glock salesman's kids go to college.
I almost, in the mid 90s, so 97, I almost went to work for Harris County.
Hmm.
Well, I'm not going to say almost, but there was some talk about going to work for Harris County Sheriff's Office, which is the second largest sheriff's office in the country. And I think at that time they had 2,500 officers. So I was like, New York City's got to be bigger than that, but I did not expect
Yeah.
36,000. That's
No, that does that,
crazy.
yeah, but that makes sense. If there's 8.5
It
million
does.
people, yeah.
Well, and it makes you wonder. LA actually has more people, but I don't know if LAPD actually has. Well, let's see, number of LAPD. Whoop. Let's get that right. There we go. And that would be
15,000.
uh, the number of So this was August 7th of 2023. The number of officers employed by the Los Angeles Police Department has dropped below 9,000. Eight
Wow.
8,967 officers. It's the third largest, but it's one quarter the size of New York City.
Wow.
Wow. I would have never guessed that either. So we're just throwing facts out here tonight. A lot of
That,
people are getting an education.
that's a lot of Sam Brown belts. That's a lot of Sam Browns.
Wow. Okay. All right. So did you do the same thing? Did you go into law enforcement full time at any point?
I did not. My real job is what my degree is in. I'm a civil engineer by training and trade. Um, my specialty is actually underground utilities, so water mains, sewers, that sort of stuff. I did design work in that, and I worked myself to basically be a project manager, and I wound up being a civil engineering project manager for the municipality that I live in. It's West Allis, Wisconsin, and it's about 65,000 people ish right now. And
Okay.
I was in charge of executing all of the construction contracts for the city. For I did it for 14 years, and so I built well, I guess I built bridges, I built libraries, police stations, fire stations, remodeled fire stations, remodeled the health department, built the health department. I've done basically all of the cool things that civil engineers do except build a pyramid. I haven't built any pyramids and I haven't built any aqueducts.
Well, then
So
nobody can vote for you for Area 5.
I wouldn't vote for
I
me,
mean,
that's for sure.
you're clearly not Egyptian.
No, that's what I wound up doing. I went to school to be a project manager. I did not go to school to be a utility guy, and that's what I wound up doing for quite a bit of time. And I guess that's kind of my segue into the whole USPSA and Area 5 thing, and I'll just say USPSA in general. Um, when you work for the government, one of the biggest things that the electorate, the people of the community, want to make sure is that the government stays on budget. And the I was told what the pile of money was, and whether the pile of money was associated with a particular project or the pile of money was to get us all the way through the end of the year. And me and my team made sure that that happened. And more importantly, that not only that we stayed under budget, but that the city got what we were paying for. So if we were paying for a new road, the new road's going to last. If we're building a fire station, there's enough room for the lazy boys and the Xbox and the big TV. That you got to do the priorities.
Okay, so Chris, that brings up some questions then. Um, the bureaucracy of whether it be a county government, a city government, a state government, whatever, and budgets. A lot of times, they put out things for bid. They're like, look, this is the project. We're going to put it out for bid. And a lot of times, what's everybody's big concern? Oh, they're going to go with the lowest bidder.
Mm-hmm.
So, from your standpoint, how did you select people to do these projects that allowed you to give the people quality for their money, but yet stay on budget?
Well, so this is going to be a little bit long-winded, and first I have to say I left the public sector and I now work for the contractor side.
Okay.
So I've taken my experience working from the owner side and I brought it to the contracting side. And I can honestly say that I work for a contractor that does it the right way, and that is our selling point. We we do it right. We do it right the first way, and you don't have to call us back because there's nothing to be called back on. Unfortunately, when it comes to government work, we have a state law here in Wisconsin that you have to take the lowest responsible bidder. Now, the definition of responsible can you can play with that a little bit. What I actually found the best way to do, and this is not my idea, the guy who had this job before me, he told me I'm 24 years old, and he stood next to me out on a construction site. Our feet are muddy, and the machines are whirling around. And he said, "This is going to be your job someday. You want to know these people. You want to understand these people. You want to look at it from their perspective, so that when it comes time to ask them to do something, one, you're asking them something that can actually be done, right? Like, this isn't impossible, and you understand what it's going to take to actually do it, so that when you go to the politicians and say, I'm going to build a bridge, and the bridge has to hold this many semis, and it has to be this high, and all that sort of stuff, but you have an actual understanding of what that actually costs. Because where things go poorly, in my experience with the government, is if you say it's a $2 million job, it comes in at 4 million, and you wind up having to cut it in half, and you're not getting a 50% job, you're really getting a 15% job, because when you cut something in half, it's just not going to work right. It's just not. So
Okay.
that's where there's forethought involved, and my team that I worked with for years was absolutely spectacular. I had a great group of people from our we did all the design work in house, and then we did all of the contract execution in house and all of the inspection in house. So we had the complete team, and so we could often get the designer out in the field watching the stuff that he designed. He designed it 3 months ago, and now he's watching it being constructed over the course of the summer. And everybody learns, whether it's the contractor learning what we're looking for, but that engineer and I was one of them that's able to be out there and actually touch stuff and see how stuff works and understand how things have worked historically, and then take it to the next step for the next year and make something just a little bit more efficient. um, we were able to take not small amounts of money, because I mean, Dave, we're talking 18 to 25 million dollars worth of contracts every year.
Ooh.
Over, I think a slow year would have been maybe 15, maybe 18 contracts, and I know we got into a couple of years where there were 30 plus contracts, and everything from full buildings to replacing an elevator. So like, don't think that
Okay.
all the contracts were spectacular. Changing out an air conditioner in a library, a big giant building, is quite a project. So, or backup generators. After 9/11, we installed a lot of backup generators on a lot of stuff. So that sort of stuff. So all of it wasn't big, huge, think earth moving equipment. Some of the stuff was pretty small, but a lot of it was, in fact, I would say that an average contract cost for us was in excess of $1 million.
Okay. Before we move back into practical shooting, did you? Are you the one who had to? When you were in charge of that, did you have to come up with the cost of these items so that you could then go to whatever government official it was that approved of your budget
Well,
for
and
these
and this
items?
is where it we really did have a great team effort. There was another, like, I was on the construction side, and field services was my actual title. So basically, it happened outside the building. And then there was a design services guy as well. And he and I would get together, and I had the historical data of this is how much it costs to build something. And he had the historical data of this is what we've built in the past, and this is how we've designed it in the past. And we would merge those ideas in order
Okay.
to come up with here's what we have to tell the politicians this is worth. And historically, um, in civil engineering world, a project that is within 10% of its bid price is considered a well-run project. You know,
Okay.
1 in 10 things go wrong. Um, I personally shot for about 5%. We had a good system in place. I had a great group of contractors that I worked with. I'm now working with one of them now, so I had relationships with all of these contractors that were bidding against each other. I knew I knew the superintendent's name. I knew their wife's name. I knew if they had kids. I knew, all that kind of stuff. This guy likes snowmobiling. This guy likes ice fishing. That sort of stuff. It really is it's a symbiotic relation, or it can be a symbiotic relationship. It can be adversarial as well. I decided to go with the symbiotic route, but other people, if they're only running one project, they'll go adversarial and they'll save money on one job, but the next job the contractor is going to get it back on. So that's
You're almost ruining your reputation right now.
what I know what I look like and I know what I come off as. Um, and I learned very early in life that I look like a football player and I can play dumb like a stereotypical football player from a cartoon. And I'm more than happy to have people underestimate me. But I do a little bit more thinking than I'd like to actually admit. I worry about stuff that I probably don't really have control of. So I work on that. But stuff like project management and budgeting, that's my wheelhouse. I've got a lot of experience with it, and it's not hard. It's very simple math, but you have to have everybody buying in to going to the same goal.
Right.
And unfortunately, and I promised you some humor when it comes to my ideas on USPSA, and I have quite a bit of it, but uh, to be like almost deadly serious because USPSA is that important to me. Uh, what we have is we have, and I keep using the word dysfunction online because nobody has agreed on the same end goal. Therefore, we can't get there because everybody's kind of shooting off in other directions. We've got two guys going this way and two guys going that way, and a bunch of missing pieces in the middle. Uh, I think and this is my engineering word, the scope. We're not all talking about the same scope of the same project, and until we get there, I think we're kind of, and I'm not going to say shooting ourselves in the foot, but we're definitely trimming our toenails way closer than they should be, and it's going to be painful putting on shoes.
All right. A good analogy. I like that. I wanted to get back to the practical shooting side of it, but now you've thrown something else out. I have to ask
Yeah,
a follow up question.
we're having a
And
conversation.
I know we are. And over beer. And my question would be, and this is not to say anybody's not doing a proper job, but everything you just said almost made me feel like the president or managing director of the organization and not an area director. Does that make sense? Where you can kind of guide the organization in a certain direction to get everybody on board.
Um, you're probably right, Dave. But I guess let me back up because I don't want that job either. Um,
Okay.
uh, so uh, the last few days have kind of magnified, and I'll just say the word dysfunction because that's very all encompassing. Uh, Everybody involved, it, I don't care what side of the argument you're on, everybody involved loves the sport and they love the sport for whatever reason. And they want to do their best. And at some point, we as human beings, not just sportsmen, but we as human beings, have stopped listening to the other side. And in this particular case, I'll say the other side is very silent. And I don't know if it's because the interweb of connected computers is too complicated and that's not the best way for them to communicate. But uh, I would like to, rather than just sit here and spew howler monkey talking points, and I've got them all, and I probably
Right.
agree with 99% of them, but rather than spew howler monkey talking points, is why is the other side of the argument not being made? What are there numbers? Are there documents? Are there ideas that we should be considering before picking what the next path is? And I don't I don't know I don't know how to do that. The area director is kind of the thing that got plunked in front of me, and this this whole story, and I've told the story to so many other people, and I guess I'll tell you too, Dave. Um, my sons are on the Instagrams, and they come to me at the kitchen table, and we try to have dinner together at least a couple of times a week, and they're like, "Hey, did you see these guys are getting kicked out of USPSA?" I said no. So now I'm introduced to Derek. I knew who Ben was already, and I start watching, and I keep trying to figure out why they're getting kicked out. Write a couple emails trying to find out, hey, why are these guys getting booted? I see what they're saying online, and I got silence from the organization. And then I actually wound up in Rio Salado and shooting a 2 day local match. It was a level one. They were gearing up to the area two match, I believe, was being held within a couple of months. So they were testing out props and squad movement and all that kind of stuff. It was a wonderful match. And I was on the squad following the area two director. And probably the nice way to put it was asking questions of the area two director. The answers kind of made my blood boil. I didn't hear about facts, and I didn't hear about specific charges, and I didn't hear about uh, the abilities to defend themselves. I heard about a hammer being dropped because a hammer could be dropped, and I've got to go back and I've got to explain this to a couple of 17-year-old boys that I've taught to punch things, that I've taught to grapple things, that I've taught how to shoot a gun. And then I've got to tell them that this is how people treat other people. And this is how, when you disagree, this is how you deal with it. You just, if you've got the hammer, you just use the hammer, and that's just the way the world works. Uh, that's not the legacy that I want to pass on to the next generation. I've given these two boys, and I don't want to leave my daughter out, but she's out of the house, so I kind of forget about her because she just costs me money randomly, but not every day directly. Uh, but I've given a certain set of skills to these young men. They're going to go out into the world, inside the next 24 months, and they're going to go off and do things as men. And to me, being a man is sometimes changing your mind and admitting that you're wrong. And back to Boromir in Fellowship of the Rings, right? I've had some bad ideas, and at my own kitchen table, I had the rule. If Dad's doing something you don't like, let's have a conversation about it. If Dad's wrong, he'll change his mind. And my kids have changed my mind. Whether it's on punishments or on household rules and that kind of stuff. sometimes you don't see all the facts or you don't see it from somebody else's side. I did not get that experience. I mean, Dave, I really did not get that experience. I knew that Ben and Derek were kicked out of USPSA before they did. I sent a message to Derek after leaving the range that they were getting booted, and they're like, "Yeah, that we know it's coming. We just don't know when." But USPSA did not tell Derek that he was booted. I actually knew about it days before he did.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've made that accusation public, and I've written that down for USPSA to do with as they please. And
Well,
I don't dig on unfairness. You know, you wanna cook the books, you want to write unfair rules, write them down, and then I'll decide whether I'm going to play or not. But to be, and I'll just say, blatantly un-American in the treatment of some of the members because you don't like what they're saying, why haven't we why haven't we had any counterfactuals? Why haven't we opened up the books or opened up the records and said, this is what we were thinking at the time, this was our best idea, and it just didn't work? We continue to run negative budgets. And I can understand from a business standpoint running a negative budget for a period of time on purpose. Hey, we're going to dump more money into advertising. We're going to invest in equipment and materials and infrastructure. I totally get it, but we're going to recoup that cost in, 36 months, 60 months, whatever that is. What's the plan? I don't see a whole lot of plans. Matter of fact, I see the complete absence of plans
yeah.
from,
Uh,
again, my limited experience watching now. Is it technically one and a half uh,
right.
board
Board
board meetings?
meetings. Yeah. Yeah. Um and my biggest pet peeve in life is hypocrisy. I that is, if there's one thing that will piss me off, is it is hypocrisy. So to now hear, and look, we neither one of us really wants to get into the politics of what's going on right now. But I will say this, that they just voted someone out of office for what they call releasing confidential information, but yet what you just told me was another area director did the exact same thing in his talk with you knowing that someone was being booted before they actually did is confident, should be confidential.
I totally agree, and I'm not. Maybe I have my facts wrong. I am more than willing to sit in the same room with that individual and say it, and I am more than willing to be proved wrong, and I will apologize. I But to the best of my recollection and my understanding of the dates of that match and the dates of everything else, I believe that I am correct.
Okay.
And again, could be wrong. You know, that's that's pretty small potatoes, except the fact that we've already booted another area director for something way less because, I mean, it was posted on Facebook already. But I, I don't understand. And kind of back to uh, the worldview. I don't understand where anybody, and I won't say anybody, where the legacy group that's been controlling the organization for so long, where they think this is going. What's the plan? We've seen the last few years worth of budgets. One, those aren't budgets. I mean, I get they don't want to get in too deep because the howler monkeys are going to howl, but there's got to be some internal documents that say, you know, low cap nationals cost this much. Race gun nationals cost this much. 3-gun costs this much. Whatever it is, those internal documents need to exist, and somebody needs to have their feet to the fire to make those numbers actually happen. And I know Yemen's running Carry Optics this year. I don't know if he's doing it that way. Um, I hope somebody is somewhere, but looks like we lost more money in 2023. We can only bleed for so long until something's got to change. And I know everybody likes shooting nationals except me. I've been to three of them. They're okay. It was I traveled last year with Jennifer, and I traveled the year before with my boys to LoCap. Great fun. And the year before that, I traveled with my buddy. Great fun, good match, but it's not all that. For me personally, I'm okay never shooting another nationals. I'm good, right? I've had the experience. You know, party optics nationals, is that a thing? I don't know, but the uh, at some point we're going to have to realize where we're spending money or where the organization is spending money, and something's going to have to be shaved down in order to make a budget actually work. You know, everybody's like, well, you don't cut my nationals. And I'm like, well, I don't know what your nationals are. Maybe we got to go back to having, two national championships for a couple of years and actually, make the poor pros pick a division, rather than shooting all of them. Uh,
Right.
and I get it. The sponsors, they want their guy to win to sell product, and that's a thing. But we're bleeding cash, and if this was our household income, you can only put it on the credit card so often till the credit card's maxed.
Right. I just want to make a comment on something you mentioned earlier. You're talking about seeing the financial numbers for what it costs, but also much earlier in the conversation, I asked you how you kept on budget, how you selected contracts,
Hmm.
and you said there were two of you. You had numbers for how much construction normally costs and what it
Hmm.
was historically. And you had another guy who said, historically, this is what we've paid for this type of stuff. So, in assuming Scott Arnberg was being honest, then that information should be available to all of the board of directors as well. Every single financial report of anything going back to 1985, if need be.
Totally agree. And I was ultimately responsible for the cost of all of the construction for all of those years. And I had a meeting every single week. So every 7 days, we discussed what projects are on schedule, what projects are off schedule, what projects are on budget, what projects are off budget. And we had a budgeting system where, let's say, for capital construction, roads and bridges and sewers and stuff, we had $8 million. We knew that we would bid out in the spring when the big projects can start so that you have the whole construction season. We'd bid out 8.5, 9 million if we had 10 to spend, across all of the disciplines or whatever. And we would have, and I'm just going to say, a $500,000 budget surplus. And then come August, we kind of know where the projects are and what's going well, what's not going well. Hey, we had this change, but hey, we had this big credit over on this job because something wound up being easier or whatever. And in mid August, usually before September ish, we kind of knew what we had extra. And then we would let a small project that used up that money to keep my contractor friends happy because then they could work into Christmas or New Year or into Thanksgiving because most of them want to shut down about Thanksgiving for deer hunting. But into Thanksgiving, if they want to keep a crew working till Christmas and the weather allows, they could do that, or we'll just finish it up in the spring. And but that constant tracking of budget costs, you know, here's what we've spent for sure. These are the payments we've already made. That cash is gone. Here's what
Right.
we're expecting this project to still cost. Uh, round numbers, $2 million project. We've spent 1.2 already. We've got 800,000 still out there, but we've probably got another $50,000 worth of extras on it. So we got to make sure that that $50,000 comes out of contingency so that that project can stay whole. And now those contingent projects at the end of the year are going to have to be a little bit smaller. And it's not hard and it's not rocket science, but it does require a dedicated eye. And with USPSA, really USPSA does what, like 86 nationals, and I don't even know how many national matches are there. Six plus uh, plus multi-gun and steel challenge,
I'll tell
or is
you in
it
just a second exactly how many it is. There are five. Well,
five plus
that's five including the IPSC National. So there's normally four USPSA and then the
plus steel
one
plus
IPSC.
plus steel challenge
Yeah, plus
plus
Steel Challenge.
so this year it's 5 and 2, so 7.
Okay.
I would think with I think Jake's got everybody blocked on Instagram and Facebook that needs to be blocked at this point, so he could definitely concentrate on you know monitoring the budgets of what's being spent, and this is what staff costs, this is what bottled water costs, this is what the secret range negotiation price costs. You can keep that out, keep it secret right next to the aliens, and just you could track all of that stuff. Okay, our staff cost is X, our water and golf carts and the stupid lanyards that we get at, and all the USPSA Velcro things for our belts. That's what all this costs. You could know this is how many people have signed up. This is how many um, advertising slots we gave away. This is how much is going to come in from actual match fees. This is what we've spent. And I totally get them not making money. I don't buy into it, but I get it. And so you could say, okay, single stack is going to lose $50,000. Carry Optics National is going to lose $150,000, and Race Gun Nationals is going to lose $75,000. So what did I just say? $275,000 in the hole. Where's that money going to come from now? That's where you go back to. Jake comes back to, uh, you know, the other boardroom where the staff meets, and Donna says, "Hey, here's the people that have renewed this year. This is how much we're making in renewals, and this is how much we're making in merchandise sales, and this is what we're making in activity fees." And Troy says, "This is how many RO classes we're having, and that's $50 a pop, and we're expecting this much income from this many classes." And they start looking at the whole. Here's our income, here's our export, what's the delta between the two? And if the delta is negative, something has to change. The
Yes.
changing, I can't, I would be a bit draconian, I'm thinking. I would just basically have one or two national championships plus steel challenge plus multi-gun. And I think that would get us pretty close to balanced. If it has to be one, then so be it. But until you see all the expenditures and you see all of the income, I don't know how you would even make that decision,
Right. And
or or,
I
e-
mean,
or
we'll
even
never.
or even have the conversation. How do you even have the conversation?
Right. And I mean, from the outside looking in, you know, I will never see those numbers, but I mean that is exactly what those on the inside need to see. All of those numbers.
Yeah, and uh, from my government experience, the total budget costs of projects that was published. I mean, flat out, the you know the rebuilding of Smith Street from First Street to 10th Street is budgeted at whatever the cost is, and that budget number would include staff time. It would include contractor costs. It would include all of the ancillary costs, like we planted our own trees along the roads. So the forestry costs would be built into that. And we had a magic computer system. It looked like an Excel spreadsheet to me, but I was told that it was much more complicated than that. And there was a whole room full of bean counter people that told me if I had money or not. But uh, each one of those things had a separate account number attached to them. So the contractor cost was item number one. The DPW cost was item number two. The forestry cost was item number three. And of course, it was the government, so it wasn't just a single digit number. It had some hyphens in there and probably some letters and all kinds of stuff. But to make us look smart, the you know this isn't this isn't rocket science. Anybody that's balanced their checkbook can see when they're out of money, and they can see, okay, next month I've got to pay my mortgage. Next month, I really like these electric lights. I'd like them to be on again. I've got to pay the electric company. I must be missing something, and I joke that it's USPSA is actually a CIA front for hiding aliens, and that our current attorney is actually our CIA handler, and that the whole reason that everything is all hush hush is because they think they've been found out and that they're trying to hide the aliens from us.
Okay.
It's the only it's Dave. It's the only logical explanation here. USPSA was set up by the CIA to hide alien bodies.
I'm going with it. That's it.
Quote me on it.
Newsflash, breaking
Quote me
news.
on it. Quote me
You
on it.
heard it here first. Okay. Now that I've caught up on most of my follow up questions, I've got a couple, but they can wait. Um, so let's get back to practical shooting for a moment. You've been doing it for quite a while. I assume you're an RO, CRO, something of that nature.
CRO, and so after shooting in the 90s, I took a apparently I didn't take a actual 20-year break. I have a classifier in from around the 2000-ish, or maybe it was 2011. I don't remember. I have one classifier, but I actually came back to the sport in 2019, and
Okay.
the things to change your mind on, putting a red dot on a gun. I had an officer show up with a red dot. He said, "Chief, can I use it?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And then he let me play with it, and then I had to have one. And then I had to train with it. And what was the
Right.
best way of training? I said, "Oh, we're going to go back and we're going to
Practical
shoot
shooting.
IPSC." It's not called IPSC anymore, but USPSA found a local range. It became immediately addicted to it, just like I was a million years ago. One, I don't know, about 5 guns later, and who knows how many more holsters.
Oh, by Hellwig.
Yeah, I, I'm sure I have thrown that holster away, but it was an Australian company. That's all I remember, and I ordered it from a gun magazine. Like where you actually had to put your money in it, a money order in an envelope and
Right.
send away. Yeah.
Yeah. When maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but back when being a postal worker, you could actually make extra money on the side by collecting checks coming through the mail.
Yes. Yes. Once upon a time, that was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all right. So where I was going with that is, have in the time that the 4+ years you've been back, um, have you gotten into any match directing or assisting with that?
So very quickly, the Schultz Resort Rod and Gun Club is my local club here. I am the match director for our monthly USPSA match. We have a separate match director for our Steel Challenge. We have a separate match director for PCSL and another USPSA club, the Northern Illinois Shooters Association, NISA, NISA. They shoot at Schultz as well. So we have a Schultz matches the second Sunday, NISA's the fourth Sunday, Steel Challenge is the first Saturday, and then PCSL is kind of, they usually do the third Sunday ish, with the third Saturday being IDPA. So we've got a pretty vibrant club. Had to join immediately because the guys were great. They were dumb enough to let me in. Then they were dumb enough to elect me to the board of directors.
Oh,
Yes. And because I could touch type, they elected me as the corporate secretary. I've got a little bit of experience with meetings and Robert's Rules of Order, and I showed up for the first meeting being the new guy. So, okay, I must have missed the agenda. I didn't, these guys don't strike me as email type guys. I show up at the meeting. Dave, there's no agenda for the meeting. The gentleman told me, oh, we have an ad hoc meeting. And I said, do you know what ad hoc means? And he says, oh, that means we just make it up as we go. I said, no, ad hoc is like Latin for for this reason. It means you're having only one topic. So are you sure you mean ad hoc? Yes, definitely ad hoc. I said, so what you're really telling is me there's no agenda. And so 3.5 hours later, I walked out of my first rifle club board of directors meeting, having typed up the meeting minutes, only to then disseminate the meeting minutes. And I quoted people on what they were saying. Like I put quotes and I said, this gentleman said this. And they freaked because
ooh,
they didn't want to be quoted in public saying things that might not look quite right at the end. So I've done my fair share of cleaning up board processes, and over the years, discussing the direction of where the club probably should be going with other people, and changing those board of directors through elections and through real legit conversations. I mean, there were people that I adamantly disagreed with, but we sat down and we had a beer together. And hey, here's where you're coming from. Here's where I'm coming from. Why are you yelling at the USPSA guys because we're comping matches if you help set up the match you used to shoot for free? And I mean, seemed straightforward enough. They're putting on the match. There's still 40 to 65 shooters going through. We're not really losing money. Well, we're losing the activity fees and the classifier fees. Okay, I totally understand. The previous match director wanted to step down. I step in and I said, okay, set up guys. You got to shoot for $5 now. That covers our activity fees. We usually run two classifiers. So $4.50 goes to the organization. I think that maybe it's $3.50. I don't know. So the club isn't losing money on you anymore, and everybody's happy. You know, just a little give and take, a little conversation, rather than pissing and moaning at each other and screaming and all that, the stuff that doesn't get anything done.
right.
So
Okay.
I've actually been the corporate secretary since 2019. So I shot my first match in, I think, April of 2019. I think I joined in May or June, and I was on the board of directors that same year. So apparently
Okay.
I can't avoid this kind of stuff.
Apparently not. You like walked right into an ambush there. Oh, you're now on the
Yeah,
board.
right.
What? I didn't get that memo.
Well, there was an
Okay.
election. There was an election and everything, but it just
Okay. So you did post that all of your stuff is into the organization, so you are an Area 5 candidate.
yes, yeah, and I have the both Heather and Donna have confirmed that's the case.
Okay. Now, you seem like you've got a lot of stuff going on. So one of the things I like to ask is for those listening and those who may or may not vote for you, do you have the time to dedicate to being an Area 5 director?
Well, and I'm rethinking the Area 5 director job. I see the Area 5 director job as, and I'll just say directing. Um, I do not have the time to travel all over the area, shoot matches, and shake everybody's hands. I would like to lie to everybody and say, boy, I'm just really looking forward to seeing everybody on the range. Um, one, and I, the number of cruddy people that I have met shooting USPSA is probably less than three. I can actually only think of one. So I mean, everybody's been great and welcoming, and we all kind of have a shared thing. So I would love to have the time to do that. And quite honestly, if the org was running smoothly, I think that that would be a great thing for an area director to be able to do, to go out and visit the individual clubs and see what's the same in all the clubs and what's different in all the clubs, and how the organization might be able to better serve all of the clubs. I think that has a value. But at this point, I see being the area director as, and I'm just going to say, babysitting the budget. Like, who's spending what, when, and why. And I don't, I'm not saying that to be controversial or even to be accusatory. Somebody's got to watch the checkbook. You just don't randomly spend too much money all the way across the board in damn near every single column. That doesn't just magically happen. Somebody should have been looking at that, saw that it was happening, and correcting course. What was the plan if this goes wrong? You know, I get it when you're building a house and you run out of money, you still got to find a way to put a roof on it. I totally get that, but where were the exit ramps on any of those past budgets? And I just I don't know that they existed, but I think the next generation of area directors are going to spend a whole lot more time with an Excel spreadsheet than with a speed holster. And that's my take on it. Uh, I personally, my all of my kids are athletes. I want to go watch them do athletic stuff. I want to hang out with my boys at the range, but I am perfectly good shooting a spectacular level one within driving distance of my home on a Saturday or a Sunday than taking a 4 day trip. And I'm not saying that you can't work remotely and you can't review Excel spreadsheets at night, but after spend all day Thursday setting up, all day Friday shooting and pasting, and then all day Saturday ROing or CROing, I don't see a lot of budget manipulation happening. So I think from my end, I see somebody looking at those spreadsheets and somebody holding the organization accountable to the members as a little bit more important than scooting oneself all over and shooting all of the nationals. That's just my take on that. And
Okay.
I do have two jobs, both of which have me in front of a computer way more often than not. I do most of my police work actually remotely, although I do try to actually get myself on patrol on Sunday afternoons just so that I can pretend like I'm doing something, uh, somewhat productive. Again, I have a great command staff underneath me, and they handle most of the day-to-day stuff throughout the summer.
And I'll be honest, I tend to agree. Now, I'm not an Area 5 resident, so I have no dog in this fight. But I tend to agree with you with what is needed at the moment as a board, as an area director, to help with getting the finances back in order, getting things going. Now, I do you not feel that your project management skills come into play here? Because I kind of feel that they do.
I I I, I think that I think I could definitely, in a proper conversation, because I do think that the the skill of conversation has disappeared uh, from the board, or at least it seems to have. But in a proper conversation, getting everybody going in the right direction, this, and I'll just say dysfunction, could be a whole lot closer to functional pretty quickly. I mean, like 6 to 8 months. I don't know if if all went well. It could be a full 4 years too. I don't know how ingrained the dysfunction actually is. If there was once upon a time real processes and they've just been forgotten, or if they're blatantly being ignored. I really don't know until you'd be able to actually dive in. But like from my side, everybody's like, "Oh, your matches are pretty good, but they're level ones. Have you ever put on a level two or a level three?" And my answer is no. I will fully admit I do the absolute best that I can. I like to put on challenging matches. I I take into account, varying round counts and the differences between short, medium, and long courses because I like each stage to actually matter in the overall. I do all of that kind of stuff, but everybody's like, hey, where do you stack up with Leif? I've shot Leif's matches. I shot that bluegrass low cap last spring. My entire squad, we all shot horribly, but it's one of the best matches we've ever shot. Leif puts on great matches. And if you're electing an Area 5 guy just to put on a spectacular Area 5 match, I'm going to disappoint you. But if you're looking for a guy that is going to, I'm going to keep everything to two decimal places. I'm not going to round things up. I'm going to look at real numbers. And I think we're kind of in a number crunching sort of situation at this point, because if we don't start crunching them, we're going to be out of numbers, and then we're all going to be shooting PCSL.
And again, I don't feel like the number one priority of the area director is to run the area match. It might be directing somebody who is a good match director and moving it around within the area so that it is a good match. But I don't feel like that is, nor should that ever be, the primary reason anybody gets elected as an area director.
Yeah, and I keep using the term range bro. Uh, I guess I can be a range bro. I like meeting new people. I like hanging out on the range. I like doing the shooty shoot things. But uh, I think the situation that we're looking at right now, and I may not have all of the information, and maybe the finances are way better than it's being made out to be, and everybody's just being silent for hiding the aliens. I don't know, but at this point, I think we need basically financial responsibility across the board, from everything from uh, whatever other things the organization spends money on, to running the matches, to the electric bill for, whatever, to, somewhere we must have servers and, IT people with cords that get plugged in. I don't know, but somebody's going to have to write all that stuff down and actually keep track of it. And I don't really see that happening from my membership side.
Right. Nor do I.
And then there's the blatant unfair treatment of some other members. And I'll just be honest with you, that's bullshit. And that's not okay. I can understand disagreeing with people, but at some point you've got to have some type of finding of facts and some type of actual standard that those facts are weighed against. And it seems like we don't really have that either.
I would concur. So now this brings up a question because you mentioned 4 years. I found out, speaking, having a private conversation with an individual, that board terms used to be 3 years, not 4 years.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts on a 3 year term, 3 year term versus 4 years?
Well, and everybody thinks that I'm just being funny, but I'm being absolutely serious. The I would like to do this and get the organization on a path that somebody else can just take over and cut and paste my, processes and take it off into the sunset. I don't, it's not that I don't want to do the job, is I would really like to see somebody else do the job, but it appears that I'm the guy with the skills and mindset at this point to do the job. And I know that I can be a little bit, and I'll say sharp tongued, and I can be a little bit forceful, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not an appropriate thing, but sometimes I feel it's what needs to actually happen. And I think we're at the point now where disagreements need to be brought to the forefront and they need to be worked through. And I know that I can say I'm sorry. I was married. I know how to say I'm sorry. And the um, I guess all of the sides can be weighed, and we can figure out where this is supposed to go. I I would be more than happy to get this whole thing straightened out and hand it over to somebody else that wants to go and shoot the every single one of the nationals, and fly all over the country and shake people's hands and smile and stuff. Uh, Maybe that's me, somewhere down the road. But I'm expecting to go to college track meets and all kinds of stuff. And not that USPSA is unimportant, but my family is going to come before USPSA.
Okay, so I think this is a good moment then to ask you the. Although I think I know, I'd rather you say it than me put the words in your mouth.
Okay.
What is your purpose for running for Area 5?
This is going to be a little bit long winded. So
Okay.
my boys and I watched. I'm trying to think of a better word, but the fuckery of the going ons in USPSA. And we chimed in online, we got blocked. We chimed in on Facebook, we got blocked. We found the howler monkey echo chamber, and we found new friends. And we continued to watch those in power to continue to blatantly do the wrong thing. And I say the wrong thing because that's our perspective of it from the outside, what we were able to see, what we were able to read in the meeting minutes, and what we were able to glean from other folks. And when your then 16-year-old son comes to you and says, Dad, nothing's changing, what are we going to do? Well, at a certain point, you can only post all of the cute memes and you can make jokes, but at some point, you've got to put your own hat in the ring. And here's my hat in the ring. Uh, I saw some unfairness. I don't like it. I'm willing to put myself out there and I'll just say fight against it to be a little bit author-esque on the terms. But this is me showing my sons that sometimes you just got to shut up and act. And here I am acting. I've said from the beginning, if there's somebody better out there and I see somebody better come forward, I will step right aside. You know, the job doesn't pay anything, and I have no intention of using it to get free match fees and free airline tickets across the country. So from my side, I'm seeing this job as nothing but my time and my intellect. And I think I have the time and I think I have the necessary experience. Um, I'm I'm the guy that might be able to bring it back to the membership, or at least bring some semblance of order to the disorder.
Well, that was good. And you said something earlier, so I want to go back because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. I don't know that I would know this had I not spent so much time here in Virginia and visited Mount Vernon and heard them talk about George Washington. Some history stuff, but I haven't focused a whole lot on Washington. But you sound and again, I have no dog in this fight, but you sound similar to George Washington, where like he didn't want to lead. He didn't want to be that guy. He didn't want to be the first president. He was happy to do exactly what you're saying is where he was go and do something and then he wanted to go back home. He's like, I'm good. You guys run this thing. And they were like, no, come. I mean, they had to trick him to come
Oh,
up to the convention to be the president. And then he was like, I don't, I only want to do it once and I want to go back home. And it kind of, that's what you remind me of in that you're like, look, I'll donate my time and my experience to get the organization in the direction I feel we need to go, and then I'm more than willing to go back into private practice, as he would say, and go from there.
wow. I'm glad I got a beard because I'm blushing here. I, thank you, Dave. Um, boy, somebody note that I'm speechless because that's not usually a thing either. um, I,
We're setting
so
all kinds of new records here.
uh, in honesty, uh, I'm a bit of a history buff. My father was an anthropology professor, so in the St. Clair kitchen table, we talk a lot of history and what might not be written in the books and stuff. And my boys and I, for years, have always discussed the founding fathers and the people that signed the Declaration of Independence and what they really laid on the line because those dudes were all rich and those dudes were already all set, right?
Yep.
They could have easily paid the taxes, and they could have just bent over and said, to put it in USPSA terms, I'm just going to shoot locals. I'm going to pay my $30. I'm going to shoot a 6 or 8 stage match, and I'm going to go have lunch and beers with my friends. And whatever they're doing at the national level, that's somebody else's problem. Uh, they didn't do that. They went along this experiment in self governance, and for better or worse, those dudes had, you want to talk about dudes that had disagreements, right? But
Yeah.
um, I want to say that it was Jefferson, but you're going to probably have to Google this. But one of the founding fathers said that a disagreement in politics or religion is not a reason to not be friends, and or something along those lines. And I have a great many friends that I don't agree with politically. I have a great many friends that I don't agree with religiously, but I count them as friends. What is it? Who is it?
It, I never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, in philosophy as cause for withdrawing from a friend. Thomas Jefferson. Boom.
Every once in a while I remember
Looky
something.
there.
Halfway right, halfway right.
So I'm telling you, man, I don't think the audience has probably learned as much as we're learning tonight, just in general.
Well, and I think that's part of one of the great things. And the I got to go back to the bluegrass match the spring of 2023. The greatest part about that was you were done shooting in time to go and eat the food, and everybody sat down at tables, and everybody ate. I'll call it a late lunch, early dinner together, and there was 100 plus dudes sitting around eating, shooting the shit, and they didn't all know each other, and maybe they'd shot on the same squad, maybe not, and the place was a buzz, and there was like a seriously really good vibe, and you can't tell me that all of those guys, you know, sat around there and agreed on everything, that the politics of the club, the politics of the nation, or anything like that. But people can actually get along and find some common ground. Uh, Back to USPSA, I don't know. I don't have all the facts. I wish there was more facts coming down the mountain at us, so maybe we could see if we are in fact wrong in some way, shape, or form. But I think with some decent conversations and probably more than a few disagreements, but maybe even some compromises, we could get this whole thing, and I'll just say not burning money, at least, maybe just like a smoldering of money, pretty quickly, and then get to the point where maybe we're cash positive in a reasonable amount of time. And I mean, we don't have an unlimited amount of money available, so we got to do it sooner than later.
Right. Yeah, agree. Now, what are your thoughts on, let's say, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to throw any hypotheticals, but just give me your thoughts on if you heard an area director say, a current area director say he doesn't know what the protests are about.
Well, I may have actually heard current area director say something similar to that. Um, I'm
Speechless.
no, this isn't speechless. I'm self-editing,
I know you are. I
and
can see. And that's good.
and if in fact that is true, that would indicate to me the complete the complete lack of understanding of what has been going on in the organization for the better part of 2 years at this point. To be willing to say out loud that that information was not in their brain leads me to have to believe that they are only getting information from certain channels and that they are unable to read their USPSA corporate email account because I know the emails that I have written personally. Um, I know that the emails that my family has written as a group. Um, I I can't believe that someone would say that out loud and still have access to that email account. And maybe I'm the only person sending emails. I don't think that's the case, but that that shows a level of disinterest that would it would worry me. That's a I was worried when I heard that. That's the word. Worried.
Okay, as was I. So you mentioned earlier, I've been saying I think it would be, I like the idea of a single nationals where it's basically every year you have a world shoot style nationals where it's all week or 4 days, 4 days, 5 days, however you want to do. We'll say 4 days of shooting. But in like world shoot, you have a day off where you're not actively
Mhm.
shooting. So you might shoot day one, day two, not shoot day three, and shoot day four. So it opens up more slots for people. You do it at a facility that can handle plenty of, I would say a 24 to 30 stage. 24, I think, is
Yeah.
plenty. 24 stage match. Maybe you do 8 stages each day that you shoot. That's
Five.
24.
Yep. 500 plus shooters. Right.
Yeah, you can get quite a few shooters in
Mhm.
there. You can fill it up completely.
You,
You're
you, may,
you're
you, may, you may remember going back to, I'm going to guess it was probably the October, November meeting minutes where Rick Steele actually made the motion that I had suggested to him. And my motion didn't actually get copied into the minutes the way that I wrote it for Rick, but I
mm,
had actually suggested that they basically break all of their national contracts that they had already set up for 2024, balance the budget, and if money still allowed, schedule a single nationals, but
and it
only if
was
money was available.
out of
And
order.
it was ruled out of order. Right. That was my motion, and I
Okay,
think I think both Scott and
Frank.
Frank uh, talked. I think they talked to Joel Park, and saying that yeah, that was from me, but it wasn't
Mm,
copied into the minutes as I wrote it.
okay,
I think had it been copied into the minutes as I wrote it, I don't think it would have been out of order because it did in fact allow for the ability to run a nationals, but only if we had the money for it. And
okay.
that was the key. I'll admit a bit draconian, but I back to your point of the single nationals, I think that would be cool. And actually having to qualify to get those slots, however the areas want to do it, or the sections, or that kind of stuff. That could be really neat, and that could be an experience. And then if I were the area director, I would take your plane tickets and your match entry, and I would use it. But I don't know what it would take to get to that point. From the sponsor standpoint, Cannock's going to have to tell Nils to just pick a gun and just go win with that one, and let somebody else win with a different gun. You know, I don't know but I think that would be really cool to see. You know, all the hot shots. They're going to shoot carry optics this year, or all the hot shots are going to shoot single stack. Uh, you know, I would love to see. like a single stack showdown, because in single stack, that's the only division where all the equipment's the same. There's only so much you can do to a 1911.
I can see that. Yeah. I mean, and I look, I thoroughly enjoyed last year's Carry Optics Nationals, where you literally had every basically every national champion there competing. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So
The weather could have been nicer. The
it
weather
could
could
have
have
been,
definitely been nicer.
but I mean that's Mother Nature. I mean, she's very squirrely. So
Ain't that the truth?
apparently she was on her cycle that first day. I don't know, but but I mean, but other than that, the people who the names that were there competing. I mean, you can't. That was amazing. But at the same time, I still like the idea of making the overall, like you said, you've been there 3 times. It's like, I can take it or leave it. Well, maybe though now a 1 week all inclusive match where at the end you have that Friday night, you have maybe it's a Tuesday to Friday. That Friday night, you have an actual nice um, ceremony, and you have a little get the first, second, and third up on a little podium
Mhm.
and talk, or get their pictures taken. Like, hey, I'm for in their match jerseys, all that. I mean, let's make it an event.
I,
Now it's something everybody wants to go to.
I totally agree. And you could have a vendors area for
Hmm.
those days that people aren't shooting, that might
Yes.
be actually, you know, I love looking at a new holster. I love looking at a new belt. But when you go to, you know, any level two or even nationals, you know what's going to be on the tables. You know who's going to be there. It might be something like that. Might be the draw for that little niche guy to get a table, because only going to one makes it a whole lot more efficient than going to, what did we determine, seven this year. And the cost of getting the table, getting the transportation, getting the stuff to sell there is all of a sudden now 1/7, but you are exposed to that many more people. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'd love to see what that would do to the operations budget. I think that would be pretty interesting. If you kind of back that up a whole year, the planning process to get to that, and I don't even know the ranges that this could happen at. That the
Me either.
Ohio place is gigantic, but half of those bays were almost useless, as far as the concrete walls go. But there's all kinds of opportunities, and I don't think anything should be, specifically on the table or specifically off the table at this point. We don't know, and it even sounds like some of the area directors just don't know, because the information is just not available for whatever reason.
Other than the finances part, which is I think right now probably the number one issue that needs to be resolved with the USPSA, because like you said, we all love the sport. We want the organization to thrive, not just survive, but thrive. And is when an organization is thriving, it's like a magnet. It's gonna suck people in. Um, but is there anything else that you feel needs attention now?
I would love to see the organization have a new club handbook, only
Hmm.
because the previous match director here at Schultz, he stepped away. I kind of followed what he was doing and then changed things incrementally, as I saw issues or way to make it better. And I think I have a very good system, but again, as other things in my life, I have a great crew behind me. I have about 40 guys I'm sorry, 40 people who regularly help me set up my match. I don't get all 40 of them every month, but I want to say that I have 23 staff members on my monthly match for March out of 72 shooters. So I've got I haven't pounded a steak on a stage for 2 years. I set up the pole barn. I get all the written stage briefings. I get all the pasters. I get all the paint, and I hand out marching orders, and the gang just makes it happen.
You manage a project.
Uh, well, it's kind of what I do,
Boom. Yeah, it's your thing.
but the there's if the organization said, hey, you want to start a USPSA club, here's how you do it, right? Here's the I, I'm picturing. I'm going to make this FUD friendly. Here's your 3 ring binder with pieces of paper slid into plastic sleeves on how to run a USPSA match, right? The okay, here's the rules, right? After you run a match, you've got 30 days to upload your results. After you run a match, you've got 30 days to pay your fees. Da 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 da. Here's all the stuff that headquarters. But great. Now, here's how to make practice score work. Here's how do you want to take online payments? Just all of the little nuts and bolts. I think there would be a whole lot more, and I'm going to say 20 to 25 person matches. And I'm going to pick a place where I know there isn't a USPSA club, Des Moines, Iowa, because
Okay.
I've got a couple that drive into Wisconsin, and I see them at matches here in Wisconsin, and they're driving like 4 hours to shoot a match,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So, but I think they've got a place to shoot, even if they only have 2 bays, right? You could run a 6 stage USPSA match with, you know, very quick turnover. Okay, one squad shoots one bay, one shot squad shoots the other, rotate, and then tear down, set back up, shoot, switch. You could do that and still be. You start shooting at 9, you could still be home by 2. But if you've only got 25 people, it it becomes a pain in the ass. But if there was a book saying, here's how you do it, here's the easy way to do it, I think there would be these little, my club is big. We're talking about capping our membership at 500 people because we've really grown. And I think we're well into the low 400s right now. So I've got a lot to draw from. My match is going to fill up whether I make it 72 people or 90 people, right? It's going to fill. But the those little clubs, I think they're scared away because there's no like manual on how to do it. I think if the org had that, that would be most excellent.
It's
Um,
funny you say that, Chris, because there's actually um, a match about 45 minutes from where I live that does that exact thing, except it's four stages, and they have 2 bays, so and 20 people, so 10, sometimes 12 per
yeah,
squad. You set up, you shoot yours, then you switch, you go over, you shoot theirs, you tear them down, you shoot the one you just built, you go over, you shoot the one they built, you put everything down. We start about between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning because you meet there at 7 to start setup.
yeah,
And then noon, noon 30, somewhere around there, I'm headed home.
yeah. And I just think that if there was a little manual out there, and I'll even now I'll play against the FUDs and for the young people, them youngins, if there was a YouTube video with the same information on it, I think you would have these small pop-up clubs. And yeah, they'd have to go collect signatures from somebody somewhere else in order to get affiliated. But more than likely, some of those people are already doing the 4 hour drive somewhere else. But if they've got a local range, they could be a USPSA club. They could be paying dues. They could be putting in activity fees, not big dollars, but I think there's some growth potential there in the organization. And I sell a lot of USPSA memberships. My match usually has two classifiers, so somebody's already halfway to being classified by shooting my match. They shoot my match, you know, if they shoot all of the matches at Schultz in a 30-day period, they have five classifiers already ready to go.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, between my two and NISA usually runs one. Sometimes they run two. So you could have five classifiers in 30 days from just shooting at my club.
Okay.
So yeah, but from and I sell a lot of memberships saying, hey, you're halfway there. Get yourself a number. Da 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 da. Give them the wholesale speech right at the new shooter briefing. And I, if there was a new shooter handbook, just the what to expect from USPSA. Why is the classification system the way that it is? What's the history? And I know we've got the magazine. I try to read the magazine. It hurts my brain. All of the stuff that's actually going on in USPSA isn't in there. Match reports, I've already gotten those match reports from people posting on Instagram, and I get to actually see people moving, right? Or they post on YouTube. It's not the way information travels anymore. But what's the benefit of having a USPSA membership? What's the benefit of going to another USPSA match somewhere else? Jennifer and I just traveled to Florida. We shot a match in northern Florida. When we showed up, we knew exactly what to expect. We knew the rules. We said hi to people that we already had something in common with. Uh, it is, and I'll just say, it's the premier shooting sport in the United States as far as we're concerned. And it's because of the rule set, it's because of the common range officer, system. We've got a good thing.
Yeah.
We've just got a little dysfunction going on right now. But if the new clubs got a book and the new members or even had access to a video series that was, and I'm going to say, well produced, and more than Troy or Jake and a handheld camera just talking, right? Something that's scripted, something that's lit correctly, something that's got graphics and all that kind of stuff. Uh, we we as an organization sell ourselves a little bit short on what the membership experience is across the board, right? They see what the membership experience is at the local club, but it could be more than that to them if they want to take a vacation, next spring. Hey, look for a match. That's what Jennifer and I do. When we know we're traveling, we look for a match. Hey, you take a morning out, from 9 a.m. to 2, you go shoot. Other than traveling with a firearm, it's a vacation, and you get to meet some new people, meet some new friends. It's a thing. And I think everybody thinks of their membership as the local membership. It could be bigger than that if sold correctly.
Yeah. It's really a national membership.
Yeah, and for all of the complaining that the Howler Monkeys do about the way the organization is running, uh, USPSA has a pretty decent rule set. There's a lot of things that I would personally mess with, but none of it is of real substance. Divisions and all that kind of stuff. That's that takes more than 3 beers to get through if you're going to talk about divisions. But I but those are good conversations. Uh, the RO training, I think it's a little bit dated. I don't think it's really geared towards training adults. I think training adults is it's a different thing than educating kids, and I think it could be sharpened a bit, maybe brought into the early 2000s ish for technology, and the testing procedures and stuff are a little bit, I'll just say draconian. I don't think it really tests knowledge. It doesn't test application, but that's me as a past instructor coming up and saying there's better ways to educate adults and better ways to show competency. But those are very minor details. We've got a good system of safe ROs. We've got a good system of a safe rule set that everybody, not everybody, most people understand and most people can implement. More than less, and it's not burning down. It's building back better. Oh no, did I just quote that guy? Ugh. Damn it! I quoted Jefferson, and I thought I was doing so well, and
Oh lordy. All right, so I've got org finances, club handbook, shooter handbook. Is that about right?
that's about right. I would like to see some type of legitimate disciplinary process and some type of arbitration process actually written down. Uh, I don't like railroading people. I don't. I think the ability to defend oneself is very important. I think the ability to have impartial people judge is even more important.
I
Um,
I, I 100% agree with you there. And if I may interrupt, I don't.
yeah,
I
go
had
go for it. I've been doing all the talking.
I had again. I've had a lot of private conversations, and some of it was enlightening for me. And one of the conversations I had was taking right now, as someone said, the board of directors is the judge, jury, and executioner. So, yes, I agree with having a process, and you have a committee or someone who would chair a committee. That's all you would need. And then they would be responsible for getting a group of people to hear a complaint of someone.
Hmm.
And they hear it, they decide, and then if the individual disagrees with that, then the appeals process would take it to the board. And then the board would be, your appeals court.
Yeah.
And that's where the final decision, if there is an appeal, would be made. But
Well, I think there has to be, not dissimilar to our criminal justice system, specific accusations. You can't
yes,
just say you speed in your car. Well, no, you sped in your car at this spot at this time and you went this fast. And
yes,
that's the only thing we're going to discuss. We're not going to say, yeah, but you sped yesterday and we just know you did it. That's the kind of stuff where personal feelings and conjecture and outright dishonesty, that's where that stuff kind of lives.
yep.
And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect person and I speed like a motherfucker, but the it's if somebody's going to hand me a speeding ticket, I only want to pay the speeding ticket for the one offense. And if there's multiple offenses, I want them all listed. And I want the ability to dispute each
Each
one
one.
of
Yes.
uh, those accusations. And what I watched happen recently, uh, the term witch hunt, I don't think does it quite justice.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you with that. Yeah.
And again, I go back to my boys because I do think of my main job as being a father. I mean, seriously, I'm going to release these kids, and they're going to be all your all problem pretty quick.
Right.
So,
Society. Yeah.
yeah, the teaching them that, you know, there's some responsibility out there, and sometimes, you get accused of things you didn't actually do, and you have to have the ability to say, no, that wasn't me, right? That was the Ferrari in the left lane, not my dad van, that sort of thing. But it has to be, fair and impartial. And I don't know how the impartial part actually plays out, but obviously the fix was in right from the beginning, and it was for political reasons, not necessarily factual reasons. And I get it. I don't like being made fun of, but like sometimes when you're made fun of, it's funny. And if you can have a little bit of sense of humor about yourself, you know, and
Yeah.
it might be also an excuse to uh, have a little introspection and see that, oh, this is how they're seeing me. If I don't want to be seen that way, maybe that's an opportunity to change my mind and change my actions. But, there I go talking crazy again.
Well, I got to ask you. You say this is kind of off topic, but you say that you still like to work patrol at times. The old beard there. Does it ever concern you that someone could use your beard against you?
It's definitely a tactical disadvantage, but I actually braid it when I'm on
Oh,
duty, so it actually comes up pretty tight. So something like that. So
oh, so
and
you do it under?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll actually braid the sides in a braid and the middle in a braid, and then bring them together and then fold them into each other. And I actually got the idea of all things from a Disney cartoon. So there was a Viking character, and like a spoof of a Viking character in a Disney cartoon, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool, and it works. It Somebody must have researched it while drawing that character, and it's a really good way to bring it up. And actually, if you see me shooting at the range, I'll almost always have it braided to just kind of keep it from doing all kinds of weird beard things.
Interfering.
Yeah,
End up with
no,
hot brass in your beard.
that's a thing.
I believe it.
That's a real thing. But the real issue is egg McMuffins in my beard. That's my biggest problem at the range. Is
With
it's
Southern barbecue, you might get burrito in that sucker.
that's a thing too. The match morning routine here is the boys and I get up because we've got to finish setup, right? We've got to hang targets and all that kind of stuff. So the boys and I get up, pile in the car, and we go through the McDonald's drive-through, and then we go to the range, start setup, and then lovely Jennifer meets us there about 2 minutes before the shooters meeting. But lovely Jennifer is a health coach and a nutrition coach, so she watches what we eat, and McDonald's apparently is not nutritious. I don't. Who knew? But she is
Who would
adamant
have
about
thunk it?
this fact. Right. I don't know. So I have to make sure that it is out of my beard before she shows up.
There you go. You
I
keep
do. I
that
do
comb
love.
handy.
Yeah, I do love me an egg McMuffin.
They are good. Not gonna lie.
Yes.
I mean, I've never had one ever.
Right. Yeah. I just smelled the ones the boys eat because they're young and can burn it off,
Yeah, that
and they
fast
have hair.
metabolism.
And they have hair.
Well, you do too. It's all right here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if eventually this is going to get long enough where I'm going to do a comb over, I'm going to comb it around back, around my ears, and then around to the front.
I like it. Okay. Well, Chris, it's been a great
Yeah,
conversation. I've asked everything that I've wanted to ask and talked about everything. Is there anything we didn't discuss that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, I have a lot of questions about black holes and like the event horizons of black holes, but that's probably
I
for a
hope we're
different
talking
podcast.
space right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Like,
So I want to
like,
clarify.
oh, back to the, we can go full circle back to how much of a nerd I am. I paid $125 to see a Neil deGrasse Tyson lecture, like where
Was it
he
worth
came,
it?
where, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it was, it was absolutely worth it. Not, he did, and I'll just say like an hour and a half of stand up, Cosmos stand up kind of stuff. And then he did like an open question. And I left after 2 hours of the open question. It was just, everything was just more fascinating than the next. And when you start looking big picture and all that kind of stuff, it that's the kind of stuff that just blows my brain.
I like watching stuff about space, but sometimes that stuff is out there. Like literally, it's like trying to wrap your head around what they're saying is like, this is just the topic they're talking about is enormous. So I tend to prefer geology over outer space.
I can highly recommend, and they've actually done two different seasons of the Cosmos theory series that Carl Sagan originally did back in the, was that the 70s or 80s?
I think 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson redid it with Fox, and then he did a second season not that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And if you just want to just trip out on the fact that there are people thinking about this and the people that have figured this stuff out, and uh, you know to bring it back to USPSA, boy, you'd think we can balance a budget if people can figure out how to shoot a rocket to Mars and actually get it back, that kind of stuff.
So what you're saying is we need Elon Musk. Okay. Got it.
Ah, that dude's weird. I'm not saying I'm normal, but that dude's weird.
Okay. Fair enough.
No, I guess just my final thing is I'm on the social medias. Instagram, I almost always at least have it running in the background of my phone. If somebody wants to reach out to me, I will gladly hand them my cell phone number. Everybody has it. It's on all kinds of things. It's not a secret. Please don't send me any inappropriate pictures. I will just laugh, and I will share them. But
But you have to define inappropriate just like confidential. You have to define it.
no, apparently you don't. Isn't that what we've learned? That
Yeah.
that rules only apply to some people, and you don't really have to define something if you don't want to.
True enough. Okay, I
I,
will
I,
put your Instagram in the show notes then so people
that,
can reach
that,
out to
that,
you.
that would be that would be wonderful. And no, seriously, to everybody, if you got questions for me, shoot them out. If you've got funny memes, send those too, because I like to laugh. What I would caution everybody about all of the USPSA BS. Um, to me, it's not personal. This is this is the sport that we all love, and we're all trying to do the right thing. Try to keep it unpersonal. Sometimes it borders both, goes both ways. I'm just as guilty as everybody else is, but everybody out there is trying to do their best. Are there betters than bestes? Bestest and betters and all that kind of stuff. There's a gradation here, but I think in the end, we're all going to wind up working together towards the same goal. So let's keep that in mind before we totally blast everybody else. Um, the Area 5 election, there's going to be at least three of us running. Uh, I know that Adam Maxwell and Leif Kunkel, they're both great guys. You're going to find that all three of us agree way more than we disagree. I think that I might be the steamroller of the three of us as far as um, getting stuff done, but that doesn't mean that they don't have valid points and that they're bad guys or anything like that. Like I said, I can only think of one person that I've met in the entire USPSA world that I would not want to shoot with. The rest of everybody, again, we might not disagree, but we can probably work towards the same goal together.
Amen. All right. Well, I'm going to have you back on again. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Well, all right. I will pack more beer. I only put 3 beers next to me, so
Okay.
well,
Yeah. Next time it might be a 4 beer
all right.
conversation.
Fair enough. How long did we go? Oh my.
Yep. All right. Thanks for coming on again, Chris.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having
me. Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.